Ladies and gentlemen, President and CEO of the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, Keenan Loomis.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a sellout crowd, so thank you so much for your support tonight. And welcome to the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce's third annual Ambitious City. As Hamilton's oldest institution, created in 1845, and representing over 1,000 members that employ over 75,000 people in this community, this organization has been providing city building and thought leadership for the entire 170 years that Hamilton has been a city. In this new century, anchor institutions need to cultivate different conversations, understandings, approaches, and solutions. To demonstrate our relevance as a Chamber of Commerce in the 21st century, we are working hard to make the case that progressive urbanism and an emphasis on quality of life are more important than ever to the commercial success of our members and the economic success of our city. Our first Ambitious City in 2013 featured Jennifer Keesmaat, a native Hamiltonian and the rock star chief city planner of Toronto. Jennifer inspired us to be bold, reaching for the greatness within our city's grasp. She talked about the recipe for success being bike lanes, boulevards, good design, strategic urban planning, and most of all, strong leadership to break through the forces of status quoism. Last year, we had the privilege of listening to Mayor Naheed Nenshi of Calgary, who spoke of a great city being a compassionate city. He shared how he motivates his citizens to do 3 things for Calgary, and told us the story of how Calgarians came together after the 2013 floods, the city's greatest time of need. This year, we're engaged in a comparative case study. With the renewal of Hamilton revolving around our creative and cultural transformation, there has been a lot of talk of late, including in the Huffington Post, about Hamilton being Toronto's Brooklyn. Of course, we've seen this before. Frequent comparisons to Pittsburgh and Portland come to mind, and they always elicit a bit of a backlash. I want to state emphatically here tonight, before we get started, that Hamilton is not Brooklyn, or Pittsburgh, or Portland. But I always think it's useful to analyze why such comparisons are made. In this case, I think it's our manufacturing legacy, our urban authenticity, our grittiness, and our living in the shadow of a major center of finance that drives the analogy. And given that things are going very well in Brooklyn, there is always something we can learn, and there is always inspiration to be gained from hearing their recipe for success. So we came up with this idea in the summer, and I started in the only place I could think of, which was to call my peer in Brooklyn. I'd long been an admirer of their website, and it was obvious to me that they were doing some pretty progressive things. Carlo took my call early on a Monday morning, and before he could hang up, I quickly explained to him where Hamilton was, that people talk about us as being you, the challenges and opportunities we are faced with, and what Ambitious City was. By the end of our conversation, he was committed to getting on a plane to Canada and dedicating 2 days in his busy schedule to Hamilton, Ontario, a place he didn't even know existed 20 minutes earlier. Not only do I hope we learn some lessons from Brooklyn and get inspired by their journey, but I'm particularly excited to showcase a Chamber of Commerce that is definitely addressing the question of relevancy in the 21st century. I hope it will quiet some of the few remaining naysayers who think it's peculiar for a Chamber of Commerce to be talking about things like complete streets, placemaking, and quality of life, on top of all the traditional things we continue to advocate for, like goods movement, manufacturing, life sciences, cutting red tape, and workforce development. When I heard from Carlo say that his Chamber of Commerce is not your grandfather's Chamber of Commerce, I was like, that's what I say. So I knew we were going to get along very well, and we have thus far today. On behalf of everyone here, Carlo, I want to thank you for coming to Hamilton. I only hope that I get the opportunity to return the favor sometime very soon, please. My second call was to Steve Paikin, someone I've been chasing down for years, hoping one day I'd be able to get him involved in a Chamber event. He, of course, needs no introduction, but he does need a huge thank you for agreeing to be our panel moderator tonight, something that he does for a profession better than anyone I've ever seen. This guy's schedule is beyond jammed, but we were able to take advantage of the soft spot that he has in his heart for his hometown of Hamilton. And we're honored to be joined by his distinguished brother, Jeff, here tonight as well. I'd also like to thank panelists Terry Cook and Tim Podesic, 2 incredible local leaders who are making a significant contribution and impact in this community. I didn't really give them much of a choice but to participate, but I also know I'll be happily returning the favor at some point in the future. And the final panelist I need to thank is Sevan Pelvetsian, the president and CEO of Civic Action. Under Sevon's leadership, Civic Action has been committed to being a GTHA organization and is having increasing success in tying Toronto's leadership into the surrounding communities that it impacts so greatly. I've been involved in Civic Action for 2 years now as a member of the selection committee for the organization's Diversity Fellows program. The emerging leaders that get selected for this year-long city-building leadership development program are incredibly accomplished and will surely be among Toronto's future decision makers. So it's with particular enthusiasm that I welcome this year's Diversity Fellows to Ambitious City 2015, and they are seated in the wings over here. And among them is Tyler Ferguson, the first fellow from Hamilton to go through the program. Civic Action's road trip to Hamilton is a historic one and started earlier today with a guided tour up James Street and then up to the top of the Stelco Tower. I've said repeatedly that this discussion of Hamilton being Canada's Brooklyn is as much a Toronto discussion as it is a Hamilton discussion. I am encouraged by the fact that as these impressive young emerging leaders go back into their current leadership capacities, and as they elevate into positions of power, they'll be able to draw upon their experiences here today to consider their decisions through a regional lens. And if they don't wish to head back in the car tonight and they want to stay here in Hamilton, we'll be more than happy to take you in. I have a lot of room in my attic if you'd like. And you can stay there until you get your feet back on the ground, and I'm sure that will take no time at all. Finally, I'd like to thank all of the partners that were integral to making tonight happen. First, great appreciation goes out to our gold level sponsors, RBC Royal Bank, Grant Thornton, and the Hamilton Community Foundation. Our silver level sponsors are WestJet, thank you for getting Carlo here. Cogeco and Cable 14, which is recording the evening, thank you so much to those sponsors. We had a great reception before the evening at Serve Ping Pong Lounge and Bar across the street, and our reception sponsor was Leuna 837. Thank you to all the partners for making tonight's Ambitious City happen. That's enough for me. I'm looking forward to sitting back and enjoying what is going to be a very edifying discussion. To introduce our keynote speaker, I'd like to introduce Carmela Trombetta, Vice President, Hamilton Commercial Financial Services of RBC Royal Bank. RBC is a huge supporter of the Chamber and our activities, and Carmela, a McMaster graduate, is a valued member of the Board of Directors of the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. Carmela.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I have the privilege to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, not only because of the background of this individual, but also because of the great presentation he has for us tonight. He's a fellow Italian, a paisan from Brooklyn, and in fact, Carlo is the vice president of the Federation of the Italian American Organizations and the master of ceremonies for the Brooklyn Columbus Day Parade. Carlo Scisuda has been the president and CEO of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce since September of 2012. He is a lifelong Brooklyn resident and advocate, as well as a lawyer and a formal small business owner, so he pretty much has it all wrapped up. Prior to joining the Chamber, Carlo served as the Chief of Staff and General Counsel to the Brooklyn Borough President, owned a thriving private practice firm, and served on the staff of the state senator and assemblyman. The Chamber is one of New York's strongest business advocacy and economic development organizations with over 2,100 members. Under Carlo's leadership, the Chamber has thrived and grown by more than 200%. The Chamber has been active in business development and in regional branding. It's also launched a number of highly innovative and successful programs and initiatives, including Explore Brooklyn, Brooklyn Made, and Chamber on the Go. Our Hamilton Chamber is the leading business advocacy group in our city. We believe in being a thought leader and creating conversations, maybe even debates, on how to continue building a bold and thriving future for our community. It's what makes Hamilton a truly ambitious city. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the President and CEO of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, Carlo Scisuda.
Who would have thought I had to come to Canada to be introduced by a paisan? But you can't get better than that. Carmela Trombetta, thank you for the gracious introduction. You know, it's amazing. You find us paisans anywhere you go, even in Hamilton, so we're excited. Thank you really to all the people here at the Hamilton Chamber for having me and inviting me. You guys have been amazing hosts. You put together an incredible event, so give yourselves a big round of applause. You deserve it. I think that a real special thanks goes to my new friend, your president and CEO, Mr. Keenan Loomis. Keenan told the story, but what he forgot to tell you was that it was a Monday morning. My secretary comes in and says, there's some guy on the phone from someplace called Hamilton. I think it's a prank. I must have been in a very good mood. So I answered the call, and I will say this, you guys don't know me, and I don't impress easily, but I was actually very impressed by the phone call, by our conversation, by his leadership, and the fact that you cold called me, Keenan. So in Brooklyn, we call that chutzpah. Now, if you don't know what that means, my friend June, my new friend June, who's from Brooklyn, I can't see you, but you know what chutzpah is. Now, he was right. Before that call, I can honestly say I had no idea what Hamilton was, so my staff and I did a little research, and really I'm excited to be here. Now, I have to tell you, my board chair is a neighbor of yours, originally from Montreal, so she nudged me in the right direction, and let me give a shout out to her, Denise Arbisu from Citibank. We always like the way she says the word about. I'm not going to try and say it, but you guys say it better than we do. And let me thank my staff for my Director of Marketing, John Medeiros, who's somewhere in the back. John, thanks for helping me put together. So I'm being told that Hamilton is referred to as the Brooklyn of Canada, which obviously I love to hear that. But why? I love to hear it because Brooklyn is about inspiration. It is about innovation. It's about cutting edge. It's about coolness. It's about hipness. It's about authenticity. So that means you're all of that. And I'm learning that you're even a little bit more. And if we can help you motivate just a little bit, then hey, we've lived up to our reputation as being that type of inspirational place. So as a lifelong Brooklyn resident, you're in for quite a ride, and we'll get to that a little later. So let me just quickly tell you about the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. We are the largest chamber in New York City, largest chamber in New York State. We represent the largest county in the state of New York with over 2.5, almost 2.6 million people. We have over 2,000 members. Our mission is very simple, like yours. We promote economic development, a healthy and robust business environment, period. So what makes the Brooklyn Chamber a little different than the rest? Well, we are what we like to call a direct service chamber. We provide financing to businesses. We provide health insurance. We're definitely innovative. You heard Carmela talk a little bit about the Chamber on the Go program, which is a mobile van that brings our services to low-income communities across the borough. We've partnered with Google and Airbnb. We're not afraid to take risks. So when Airbnb came in and said, we need a friend, I said, well, the Chamber is about innovation and about the future, and here we are. And that's critical about being a chamber in the 21st century. So that's a little bit about us. Now, show of hands, who has never been to Brooklyn? Okay. You all need a visit. So you all have your own impressions and misconceptions of Brooklyn. Now, your parents, or some of you of a certain age, may still think of Brooklyn something like this. Now, Yes, I looked like that when I was younger, but that is 86th Street. Carmela, you'll appreciate this. That was a time when Italians ruled the neighborhood, and all the young men wanted to look like John Travolta, and all the young women wanted to sleep with John Travolta. So it was that simple. Okay, another misconception, or again, some of you of a certain age may remember this Brooklyn.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place.
Again, John Travolta, I don't know what it is, but he is a Brooklynite. So now I noticed a lot of hipster-looking people in the audience. The beards are obviously like Williamsburg. So many of you may think of Brooklyn as this.
We go hard. We go hard. We go hard.
Ha!
We go hard. We go hard. We go hard. We go hard.
So Jay-Z, John Travolta, it's all the same. It was cool in the 70s, but different. It's definitely cool today. But now let me show you a short video of really who is the Brooklyn and who are the people making the borough today.
I'm the founder of Mama O's Premium Kimchi, and we make kimchi products here in Brooklyn, New York. We're located here in the Pfizer building here in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and we're kind of the epicenter of the Brooklyn foodie movement. So the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce has been great in helping me and my fellow Brooklyn businesses really grow our business by having the Brooklyn Eat show and also subsidizing some costs for the fancy food show.
My name is Bob Bland, and I'm the CEO and founder of Manufacture New York. I found incredible support from the Chamber of Commerce from the immediate outset, and I can definitely say that my business would not be the same without the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. When I started creating businesses in 2006, I was 23 years old, and there's no way you could get me to join a Chamber of Commerce. So the fact that this Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce has brought so much outreach to the younger generation and made the program so accessible is truly remarkable.
What brought me to the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, honestly, was the people. When I moved in here, I quickly learned that it would benefit me as a business to join. So I would know my neighbors, I would know what's going on, and I would get a lot of the business services, which I have gotten since I joined. Brooklyn is a very powerful brand, and the Chamber is doing an excellent job capturing that power.
My name is Joanna Ebenstein, and I'm the creative director of the Morbid Anatomy Museum. Humanity is the word I want to use. It's just like people banding together. Maybe that's what originally chambers of commerce were supposed to be, but it just feels like a bunch of people who are working together to try to make Brooklyn a better place for businesses and nonprofits in a very human way.
I have two companies, Dovin Architecture, we're architects providing full-service architectural services, and Think Fabricate, we're furniture, lighting, and special custom projects. The fun of Brooklyn is finding out about its neighborhoods and who works there and all the different activities going on.
I'm Shannon Reinhart, and I am the Director of Sales for the Sheraton Brooklyn, New York. There's so much development here. New apartment complexes, new businesses, new hotels, new theaters opening all the time, renovated spaces. Brooklyn as a whole is just becoming its own destination, and people want to be here.
I can't speak for any other chamber, but this one is like fantastic. They bring the dollars here, so it's a good thing.
I recently moved back into the New York area, and with everything happening in Brooklyn, as fast as it's growing, as big as it's getting, there was no question about it. These hotels, this hotel in particular, needed to have a great relationship with the chamber.
I'm Toby Moskowitz. The company is called Heritage Equity Partners, and we're a Brooklyn-based real estate developer. The Brooklyn Chamber, under the leadership of Carlos Sosura, they certainly had a big hand in the commercial and the economic renaissance going on in Brooklyn right now, which is helping people understand what's so unique about people who live and work in Brooklyn, that it's possible to work in Brooklyn. It's a great place to start companies. It's a great place to hire people. And it's a great place to spend 24 hours every day, not just the portion of it when you go to sleep.
My name is William Floyd, and I'm the head of external affairs for Google New York. The Chamber of Commerce is helpful to our business, Google, in a very specific and deep way, which is they are the connective tissue for us and local small and medium-sized businesses.
My name is Sophia Sylvester, and what Brooklyn Flavors does is we make skincare products using natural butters and oils that are named after some Brooklyn neighborhoods as well. It's just going to get better and better. You know, they're going to add new programs and just new ideas, and that's what I really love about the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. Brooklyn is where it's at.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Brooklyn of today. Ethnic, diverse, hip, new, but with its roots firmly entrenched in what the borough is about, which is being unique. Which is exactly what Hamilton is about, being unique, and that is critical. So I'm going to tell you a lot of great things about what's happening in Brooklyn and why we're a little similar to Hamilton, but let me tell you a little bit about where we came from. As the early videos of Saturday Night Fever and Welcome Back Kotter show, Brooklyn used to look very different, and those are real pictures of Brooklyn. About 25 years ago, crime was at an all-time high, thousands of murders in New York City. People were fleeing the borough, and the number of jobs was rapidly decreasing. There was absolutely zero private economic development happening and investment in Brooklyn. We were the poster child for decaying inner cities. We were the poster child for what they used to call white flight. We were the poster child for people going to the suburbs. And all that just 25 years ago. Now we're the epicenter of cool. With crime at historic lows, thousands of jobs being created every year, and like Bob Dylan sang, times they are a-changing. Now, there were many catalysts for the monumental changes Brooklyn experienced. I know there have been a lot of changes here in Hamilton as well, and I saw it today on my walking tour, and I have to give a shout out to the two tour guides who gave us a tour. You did a great job. But if you want Hamilton to really continue to grow and become the city that it should be, and maybe follow a little bit of Brooklyn's path, let me give you my top 3 Brooklyn game changers to replicate. So first question, any Sex and the City fans here? All right, so now, you know when Miranda crossed the Brooklyn Bridge and said, "Goodbye, Manhattan," that's when we knew Brooklyn had arrived. And there she is walking across the Brooklyn Bridge. But seriously, here are my real top 3 choices. Downtown. I can't stress enough the importance of a downtown. We are a downtown that is transit rich. We have about 10 train lines that arrive there. We house the headquarters of the borough's government. Now, in the 80s, not long ago, we had zero private sector investment. We had not a single square foot of office space built after World War II. Think about that. And then in the 90s came Metrotech, a 15-building development with millions of square feet of Class A office space, universities, restaurants, and a hotel. That replaced blocks of abandoned and dilapidated structures and basically parking lots that were serving no purpose. Sound a little familiar, right? Today, it is home to the offices of a leading 3D printing company, Tough Mudder, the Brooklyn Nets, and I can go on and on and on. A thriving employment center is crucial, and as a city, you cannot grow without it. Now, speaking of the Nets, I know there are no Nets fans here, I get it. We still play host to your Toronto Raptors. We used to play host to them in some place called New Jersey. That was a long time ago, but in the summer of 2012, they upgraded and they finally made it to the big leagues, Brooklyn, USA. They moved into the Barclays Center, and with that, they changed the face of the borough in the process. Now, too bad they are not playing well this year, but hope springs eternal. They will do better. After over 50 years, when the Brooklyn Dodgers left, Think of it. A city of over 2 million people did not have a professional sports team. Now, I'll tell you this. The Dodgers may have left for La La Land in the 50s, but they wish they were playing in Brooklyn because there is no place like it. And this year, we just added the New York Islanders. We have a great arena to host events and concerts, and it's pretty amazing. Jay-Z, The Who, Madonna, Billy Joel, and your very own Justin Bieber. No comments on that one. Look, it brought world-class events, but it pumped billions of dollars into our economy. It created a thriving retail scene around it. Restaurants, bars, shops, stores. Amazing. And jobs, 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 jobs. I cannot stress enough the importance of jobs. And last but certainly not least, another game changer for us was the rezoning of two of our waterfront communities, Greenpoint and Williamsburg. How many of you have been to Williamsburg? Cool, of course. And it's still cool and it's still hip and it's got it all, but it also has thousands of new apartments that created thousands of new jobs and pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into the economy. So these neighborhoods consisted of mostly low-rise buildings with a little residential and a lot of vacant industrial space. And by the way, a very short commute to the outer borough of Manhattan. And it connected to thriving neighborhoods like Greenwich Village and Union Square, incredible views, and it was a prime, underutilized location. In 2005, the Bloomberg administration, working with local partners, rezoned the entire community. The city committed to a massive, and when I say massive, I mean massive, rezoning that allowed for never-before-seen high-rises to be built on our waterfront that have residential units, retail stores, parks, open space, public schools, you name it, all in one place. We finally tapped into the potential by doing something a little tough, which was rezoning, allowing height, which is not an enemy. Tall buildings are not an enemy, folks, but making sure that they integrate with the local community and that open space is available for everyone in the neighborhood. So the truth to me is really simple. We need to invent a new word to describe what's happening in Brooklyn, because I don't think booming, cool, trendy, or any of these other popular adjectives really do us justice. By the way, you like my little Brooklyn accent? Just checking, okay. Brooklyn is truly seeing a renaissance in every area, from the economy to population to tourism and everything in between. Again, it goes back to the economy. The economy is growing at an incredible rate. We are now the second largest job center in New York State after Manhattan. Abandoned warehouses have been replaced with condos and retail and office space and tech incubators, and new startups are flocking there. So while the glittering high-rises look nice, without the jobs, it really doesn't help us thrive. And think of this, between 2003 and 2012, private sector employment grew by 20%, almost twice the growth rate of the rest of the city. And that's critical. Tourism industry is one of our primary job creators. I was actually very impressed today walking into your tourism center, and I see that Hamilton is embracing the tourism economy. I cannot emphasize enough what it has meant to Brooklyn. It is a major economic engine that translates into thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars being spent. And not to mention the word of mouth. So you may not come to Brooklyn, but you hear about Brooklyn. And it's the same with Hamilton. People may come here and talk about it, and even if I haven't been here, I hear what's going on. That is critical. Now, just to go back a little bit, in the 80s and 90s, no one came to Brooklyn. You would walk over the Brooklyn Bridge, and then you'd quickly turn around and walk back. You had no reason to stay, unless maybe you went to Junior's Cheesecake for the best cheesecake in America, or if you were strong enough to go to Coney Island to ride the Cyclones and have a Nathan's hot dog. Of course, in that order, not the other way around. To put something else in perspective, and where you guys are way ahead of us, before 1999, we did not have a major hotel in Brooklyn. A city of over 2 million people, not one hotel. And then the New York Marriott at the Brooklyn Bridge was built. Now we currently have over 40 hotels, another 20 more planned by 2018. Sheraton, Hilton, Hyatt, all the major brands, and all the boutique hotels. There's a reason visitors are coming to Brooklyn. There's a reason why 20% of all people who travel to New York now visit Brooklyn. We have some of the best attractions, nightlife and shopping on the East Coast. Nightlife is critical, folks, because if you have a downtown or a city that shuts down at 5 o'clock and people go home, that's a problem. You need a 24/7 mixed-use community where you can live, you can work, you can shop, you can eat, you can play, and you can visit. Very critical. Artists and creative people over the last 15 years flocked to Brooklyn. With that came top-quality restaurants, bars, retail shops, galleries, museums, performance venues, all of it. It follows, it follows, it follows, it follows. But look, rather than letting success get to our heads and becoming like the outer borough of Manhattan, we made ourselves a little different because we are an edgy place and we are authentic, as Hamilton is. You are certainly not Toronto, you are Hamilton. So along with all the array of options Brooklyn offers, we have culturally vibrant and diverse neighborhoods, we have the old school New York atmosphere, we have all the glamour of Manhattan with the grittiness of Brooklyn. And grittiness is okay. You don't have to just look like these gleaming high-rises. They're nice, but be who you are, be gritty, be cool, it's okay. So I'm preaching to the choir because Hamilton, I saw today, has a strong artistic population, you've got great diversity. But the question for you all is, how do you translate that creativity, all of the things you have, into money? Money, money, money. The bankers understand that. If you don't have money flowing into your city and people coming here and spending the dollar, whether it's the US or the Canadian one, I don't care, what do you do? So if I'm visiting Toronto, what makes me, a Brooklynite, who didn't even know that Hamilton was here, get in my car and drive to Hamilton? Same question in New York. Why is someone going to walk over the bridge, oh, it's great, it's nice, but I want to see the views of Manhattan, and then run back to Manhattan? What is the reason? So you take all the skills that you have in your city, all the energy, all the creativity, and you put them to good use. You invest in your talent. You establish attractions that draw people here. My feeling is simple. If you build it, they will come. It's very simple. And before you know it, tourists will be exploring the entire city and finding hidden gems. And I have to tell you, there are tourists that come to Brooklyn that find things I don't even know about, and I've lived there my whole life. That's the excitement of that industry. Word of mouth spreads. People from across Canada, the US will be coming here. They'll want to spend money here, spend their time yet, and I've seen it happen in Brooklyn. And the best part of it is when you get those Toronto folks saying, wow, we love coming to dinner in Hamilton. Wow, we love coming to the theater in Hamilton. We love bike riding in Hamilton, etc. It's worth double the value, just like when a Manhattanite says, I don't want to be in Manhattan anymore, I want to be in Brooklyn. So tourism is very critical. We actually created something called Explore Brooklyn. I hope you'll all visit it. It's a wonderful site. It's got a mobile app. It's a terrific way to feature our members and all the wonderful things we're doing, but allows us to promote tourism. And I've been to yourtourismhamilton.com, and it's a great start, and your tourism center is amazing, but keep pushing it, folks. Keep pushing that tourism. It really will affect all of you and will change everything about you. One thing we just did on explorebrooklyn.com is you are now able to book a hotel in Brooklyn right on the site. Don't let people leave the site. So on your site, let them book a hotel in Hamilton. Don't let them go to Toronto or anywhere else. Retail, amazing commercial corridors in the borough, amazing little shops, big stores, medium stores that sell the high-quality artisanal products Brooklyn is known for. Brooklyn products are in demand all across the world, and they are flying off the shelves in our borough. And today I noticed walking on your main street, it looks a lot like Brooklyn. You have great mom and pop shops. You have interesting little creative stores. And the real challenge for you, which was a challenge for us, is making sure that people are here to visit all of those stores, because otherwise those stores won't be around forever. So make sure you spend your money in local stores. Retail is always a challenge. We just did an economic study that basically says we lose $6 billion a year in people spending money in retail outside of Brooklyn. And that's a big problem, and that's a challenge for us. I'm sure it's a challenge for you. How do you get Hamiltonians, did I say that right? Oh, good. Okay, Hamiltonians to spend their money in Hamilton and not somewhere else. Big challenge for you all, but a challenge that's really worth it. And look, you're part of a highly industrialized region of Canada, and when people say manufacturing is over, it's in China, it's somewhere else, it's in Mexico, I say, as we say in Brooklyn, forget about it. Does everybody know what that means? You should. Because look, in Brooklyn, we're never going to make cars. We're not making cheap T-shirts, period. It's not who we are. But we are making creative artisanal products. We are one of the largest new innovation hubs in America. We are a driving force of increasing manufacturing in New York State. We are the borough of innovation and makers. You saw a few of them. Bob Bland, the young lady who spoke to you, she is moving almost all of the garment manufacturing out of Manhattan and into Sunset Park, Brooklyn. Food makers, both hipster foods and traditional pasta sauces that I know Carmela and I love, are being made in Brooklyn. Innovative home design, furnishing, lighting, everything being made in Brooklyn. By the way, it's more expensive than anywhere else, but who cares? It's made in the US. Here, you'll have products made in Canada. Put a label on it, made in Hamilton. If Brooklyn did it, you can do it. It's a wonderful thing. It adds to the value of your city. And by the way, as a chamber, it shows your members you're really doing something for them. So Keenan, you know what you need to do. So it's interesting. We continue to work on the food manufacturing. We continue to work on the design manufacturing. And then there's the whole techie world. Now, I really have no idea what that means, because in New York, we talk about tech, tech, tech. But I do know that tech brings young entrepreneurs into neighborhoods that 10 years ago I never would have walked through. It recreates the vibrancy of a community, and it creates high-paying jobs. And tech companies don't need to be in Manhattan. They certainly don't need to be in Toronto. They can be in Brooklyn, in a warehouse in Bushwick, or they can be in Hamilton, in a warehouse in Hamilton. Go after the tech jobs. They are the jobs of the future. And I think that's part of what makes Brooklyn exciting. It's part of what makes Hamilton exciting. It's really part of that fabric of the authenticity. And then with all of this, you must invest in critical infrastructure. Broadband and fiber optics are critical. Utilities are critical. Public transportation, ferry service, bike paths. You have a bike share here, critical. And let's not forget us drivers, because we still make up most of the people commuting. In Brooklyn, it's tough. You are more spread out here. You have more opportunities for movement, and that's a good thing for you guys. I know you're working on a new light rail or something like that. It's amazing. We're trying to do that in Brooklyn as well. These are the future innovative ideas that will shape your economy. It will make the difference of a young person staying here or leaving, because the worst thing for any city is what they call the brain drain. It's happening all across the world. It's happening in Europe. By the way, it's happening in many US cities. But you know where it's not happening? In Brooklyn, because we are investing in the jobs of tomorrow. Not even the jobs of today, the jobs of tomorrow. And that is keeping young people there. It's bringing people from all over the world to the borough who want to live there. And I say bring it on. Diversity is what makes Brooklyn unique. It's what makes us fascinating. So as your brand grows, I see that Made in Hamilton brand someday. Do it. It's exciting. And someday, you know, you go to China and there's a Brooklyn store. You go to Japan and there's Brooklyn. And you go anywhere in the world and there's Brooklyn. Well, I want to go around and see Hamilton now that I've been here. And I'm telling you, if Brooklyn can do it, and you saw those photos of what Brooklyn looked like 25 years ago, you are way ahead of us already, and you will do it. So our Brooklyn Made certification is very simple. If you make it in Brooklyn, we want to showcase you. We show off what you are about. We show off that you are true Brooklyn. And now that we've created this edginess around the word Brooklyn, the companies are making a lot of money, which is creating a lot of jobs. It's amazing. So we have over 200. I'm looking forward to hearing, Keenan, about your Hamilton Made someday. I will continue to keep you on that. So supporting, promoting, and investing in local manufacturing is really critical. Artist communities, just like Hamilton, bring them on. By the way, if you own properties, give artists cheaper rent for a few years. It will pay off dividends in the long run. If you are in the banking industry, lend them money. Let them buy buildings, because that's what we did in Brooklyn. And now we have buildings that were bought 5, 10 years ago for a few $100,000, selling for $1.5 million and $2 million. It's happening, folks. It's really happening. Another big industry, and I know people in this part of Canada understand it well, is TV and movie filming. We have 2 of the largest sound stages in America, Broadway stages and Steiner Studios. We have colleges that offer incredible filmmaking programs. So that nexus between making and education and the future of education is critical. Tax credits. You should be lobbying your government for more tax credits, because the amount of jobs we have gotten in Brooklyn because of the tax credits has been phenomenal. Just don't take any TV shows away from Brooklyn, or you will see the Brooklyn attitude come out you. So just remember that. And people. Look, we talk about all of this, but if people are not moving to your city and they're not staying, there's really no purpose of it. So think about this. If Brooklyn were to be miraculously taken out of New York City, I'm not calling for secession, but let's say we were taken out of New York City. The 3 or 4 top cities in America would be New York City, Los Angeles, and then a very neck-and-neck battle between Chicago and Brooklyn. That tells you our population, 2.6 million and counting. And again, you want people to live there, to work there, to play there, and to be everywhere. Very critical. Immigrants continue to come to Brooklyn. They come from China, they come from Mexico, they come from South America, they come from Michigan, they come from California, they come from Florida, they come from Canada. You get the point. Interestingly enough, over 15% of all foreign-born immigrants coming to Brooklyn have advanced degrees, PhDs, masters, and others. So we're attracting some of the very best and brightest from around the world. Diversity is something very important to us. My parents came from Italy in the 1960s. I know there's a lot of Italians in Hamilton, so love you Italians, good to see you. But it's critical that new energy comes in with new immigrants. So don't be afraid of it, embrace it. And as long as people are really understanding what your city is about, let them grow, let them open businesses, let them pay taxes. Because the more you take, the more the government makes and the more your city makes. And think about that. It's investing in your future. Very, very critical. So I think one of the challenges, because it's not all rosy, it's not all perfect, there are challenges. You have to make sure you don't price out the people who were there all along. The mom and pop stores, the low-income residents, or the middle class that stood by Hamilton through the decades. That is very critical. So for us, we've created industrial business zones, which foster industrial growth by establishing real estate certainty. They have lower rents compared to average rents. That's critical. And look, in ambitious cities, whether it's Brooklyn or Hamilton, when the creative community is growing every day and trendy, cool businesses are opening up to cater to it, you have to develop innovative ideas to keep up with these businesses and to assist them. So how does Hamilton continue to move forward? What do you do to not just be Brooklyn, but to be a better you? Because that's your challenge. One, I think invest in arts and culture, invest in creating world-class attractions, invest in bringing that vibrancy into your city. Two, promote tourism. Promote tourism. Promote tourism. You heard me, right? Promote tourism. It is a growing industry. And again, get your Toronto neighbors to figure out why Hamilton is so cool and get them to spend their money here. Reimagine your industrial manufacturing centers. Very critical. And finally, and this is going to be tough, rezone or repurpose your underutilized spaces. I took a walk through downtown Hamilton today, and let me tell you, there are too many surface parking lots. There are too many empty lots. Rezone. Don't be afraid of height. Bring people living downtown. Because when people live downtown, all of you that have businesses here will be the one making the money. So I think it's critical. I think it's important. I hope you're convinced and that you have no doubts that Brooklyn has truly seen a renaissance. So look, 15 or 20 years ago, you could argue that we were in the shadow of Manhattan. I agree. But now we have our own shadow, and we cast our shadow over everyone, especially Manhattan. So don't be afraid of Toronto. Cast your own shadow. It's critical. And I think at some point in the very near future, you won't even be able to remember a time when Hamilton was considered in the shadow of Toronto. You would even remember that Hamilton was compared to Toronto. Oh yeah, if you're in Toronto, go to Hamilton. Absolutely not. You should come to Hamilton, period. So whether it's Brooklyn, Manhattan, Hamilton, or Toronto, cities always face new challenges, and they clearly always face obstacles to their growth. But by facing the obstacles, you succeed. And success comes from many angles. But to every problem, we believe in Brooklyn, there's a solution waiting to be found. We've done, I think, an amazing job in finding a solution over the last 15 to 20 years. It's allowed us to become the worldwide leader and a brand that we are today. I haven't spent much time here in Hamilton. I hope to come back. But from what I can tell, just walking today, from what I can tell in talking to all of you, from what I see in the people, from what I see in the energy, from what I see looking in your eyes when you talk about your city and understanding what it means to me, I think you definitely have a lot of Brooklyn in you. You've got the chutzpah. Again, look it up if you don't know it. You've got the creativity. You've got the passion. You've got the energy. You've got the drive. You have natural beauty. You've got it all. So I have a funny feeling you're going to do just fine. And I have an even bigger feeling that someday I'll be telling people that Brooklyn is the Hamilton of New York. Thank you, everybody.
So Carlo, we're going to thank you more formally later on after the panel discussion, and I have the pleasure tonight of introducing Steve Paikin. Hi everybody, I'm Paul Gibble from Grant Thornton. So the anchor and senior editor of the Agenda on TVO, Steve Paikin has moderated leaders' debates for 3 federal and 2 provincial elections, has written 5 books, and has created several documentaries. Whether in front of the camera or a live audience, Steve always brings an intelligent analysis to top headlining stories, be they local, national, or international. Just to give you a flavor of some of Steve's books and what he's written about and what he has interest in, his latest one is called Paikin and the Premiers, A Personal Reflections on a Half-Century of Ontario's Leaders. He wrote a book, The New Game, where he looked at the history of hockey and the changes that have shaped the game. In 2005, he penned Public Triumph, Private Tragedy, the double life of John P. Robarts, one of Ontario's premiers. He's also written The Life, The Seductive Call of Politics, and The Dark Side, The Personal Price of Political Life. One of his documentaries is Return to the Warsaw Ghetto. It was a Silver Screen Award winner at the U.S. International Film Festival, Film and Video Festival, and also won awards at Canada's Yorkton Film Festival and China's Shanghai Film Festival. In June 2013, Laurentian University named Steve their second chancellor. And in December of 2014, he was appointed a distinguished visiting professor at the RTA School of Media and School of Journalism at Ryerson University, starting about a year ago. Most of you do know Steve is originally from Hamilton. He was educated also at University of Toronto and at Boston University, so that explains why he comes back for the Hamilton Tiger Cats and is a Boston Red Sox fan. Steve, for sure, is no stranger to Hamilton. He's back quite a while, and we welcome him back amongst his friends tonight.
Let me just start here, and then I'll go over there. And can I invite my other panelists to come up and join Carlo up here on stage? Tim, Savon, and Terry, just come on up, and I'll kill a little time up here because there are a few clarifications I need to make. I'm not a Red Sox fan because I went to Boston University. I went to Boston University because I was a Red Sox fan. It was the other way around. So let's get that straight, first of all. Second of all, you know, one of the things that I'm going to regret for the rest of my life is that I didn't get, I often get back for the Ticat games. I did not go to the game this past weekend because at the beginning of the season, I was so convinced that they were going to win the East and there would be no semifinal in Hamilton that I took our annual NFL road trip this weekend. So I saw a really average game in Nashville this past weekend and missed the phenomenal game here in Hamilton this weekend, which is too bad. And the last thing is, Keenan, where are you? Keenan. Okay, I don't know who gave you the script on that descriptor of my brother, but I think you described him as the distinguished Jeff Paikin. I don't know who the hell you're talking about, really. I mean, that's just so not accurate, you have no idea. I know you're trying to be nice. I know he's got a front row seat and he thinks he's distinguished, but trust me, distinguished? Come on, who are we kidding? Fox, back me on this, right? He's not distinguished. Okay, let me come on over here now. Sean, Dave, we got this working? Beautiful. Okay, let's follow up. First of all, I know you applauded once for him already, but Carlo, where are you?
I'm here.
That was a fantastic presentation. Can we welcome him once again? That was just great. There is, and let's get into this right now. I think all of you will know our panelists up here tonight. Sevon Pelvetsian is the president, CEO of Civic Action. She's SP, I'm SP. She's been on the agenda a couple of times. Not in a while, though.
We'll be back.
You will be back. We'll get you back soon. Your regionalist, Terry Cook, is here. Former regional chair of Hamilton Wentworth, now president, CEO of the Hamilton Community Foundation. Tim Podesick is here, co-founder of the Super Crawl. Fantastic event, Citizen of the Year in 2013. What year were you Citizen of the Year? He was 2012. So he actually beat you as Citizen of the Year. See, again, my brother not so distinguished because Tim beat him as Citizen of the Year by 1 year. Let's get into this. There is, I think Carlos put his finger on the fact that there is a certain fascination right now, an appeal with what's authentic, what's gritty, you know, kind of those cool elements to build a city around. Sev, let's get into this. How do you make sure, let's put it this way, there's a fine line between sort of gritty and authentic and New Jersey. And we don't want to, right? Now, we want to be, you know, Hamilton to Toronto, Brooklyn to Manhattan, as opposed to Brooklyn to New Jersey, Hamilton to New Jersey. Give us some of your thoughts on how you get more authentic and not run down. It's a fine line.
I'm sure it is. So I would say a couple of things. First off, and I want to thank Keenan and the great team for putting together this amazing event and for bringing up such a distinguished American. I think it's fascinating, and this is one of the things that unifies us as Canadians, that we can't help but figure out who we are by looking south of the border to find an American counterpart to compare ourselves to. And listen, we found a good one because Brooklyn is clearly doing a lot right. But rather than think about what cities in America, Canada can look to compare for or against as it relates to that passion and that grittiness and that innovation, I think what we heard from Carlo and what we saw this afternoon from the tour and all of us who spend time in this great city, we don't have to look much further than our own municipal boundaries. And in fact, at Civic Action, obviously, we're thinking not just about the municipal boundaries, but about the city region, because that's really what Carlo helped us to reinforce. Brooklyn is 2.5 million people. That's Toronto. So we are not thinking about the perforated edges anymore of city life. How we live and work and play is about that city region. And when you're as big as Brooklyn, and you have 170 metro stops or subway stops, that's more than the TTC. I mean, TTC is out 69 total. So we're comparing the wrong apples and mangoes. We got plenty of apples and mangoes right here, folks. And while it's great to look south of the border to look for inspiration in new ways, we have all the ingredients here, and it's not necessarily about being too gritty or too edgy. It is about being authentic to what we have in our package.
Fair enough, but Terry, are there, sure, applause, that was good. Having said that, it's not wrong to learn from the experience of others, and if Brooklyn is doing something that this city needs to be aware of, or may even want to, heaven forfend, copy, that's okay, isn't it?
Of course it's okay, as long as we don't suggest that their experience necessarily translates here. It's a different legislative environment. It's certainly different in scale. But what I think is similar is when you look at the trajectory of New York, a city that was bankrupt in 1974 or 75, the great thing for Hamilton was not that we were in competition with Toronto. In fact, for many years, it was the thing that buoyed this local economy. When people who had worked in heavy industry couldn't find jobs, they worked in the skilled trades in Toronto. That sustained us. We never saw real population loss. We never had the tough issues around school desegregation that you continue to struggle with. And frankly, in terms of starting point, while we're perhaps 20 years removed from where you're at in your trajectory, I happen to think that we have a lot of assets here that I'd put on the bargaining table as pretty good starting points. And I love to learn from Brooklyn and Philly and Pittsburgh and Portland. All of them have lessons for us, but we have to understand that we're going to succeed, first of all, by understanding we're part of a larger city region, and to the extent it does well, we will do well, and to the extent we can build on the authenticity and the grittiness that's here, I think we'll be successful. We're just at a different point in our evolution.
Let me follow up on that. Carlo, I was live tweeting your speech.
I saw.
And did get some, the lovely thing about that is, you know, as I was doing it, I was getting feedback from you know, people, whoever, following it. And Tim, somebody said to me, okay, learn from Brooklyn, but follow your own path. Very important to follow your own path. Do you think this city's doing that?
Oh, most definitely. I think Hamilton has, from the culture perspective, because that's where I speak from, we've had a very strong cultural presence in Hamilton, and it's always buoyed. It's come up, it's gone down. It's come up, it's gone down, but it's always been here. And now we're the talk of the town, so to speak, with respect to people from Toronto. When you talk to Toronto, artists are flocking here. And they're flocking here because Hamilton is the real deal. When you've got guys like Tom Wilson, you know, multitudes of artists in town that are, you know, really true Hamiltonians that speak about Hamilton as an amazing town and have for their entire career, even when it wasn't spoken about as an amazing town. We're starting to, you know, basically, the surrounding regions are starting to look at Hamilton as a cultural mecca, and they're flocking here, and it's a fantastic feeling.
Okay, you'll all understand that my job up here is to push back a little bit on some of what I've heard here. So, Carlo, let me sure. Gently go at you a bit here.
I'm from Brooklyn. You don't have to be gentle.
Good point. Good point.
We get bored with gentle.
Okay. Well, then let's hit it on the head. Did you guys get lucky because you had a rich guy come in there, wanted to put up a brand new hockey arena, which managed to attract some teams that were doing lousy elsewhere, and therefore you got this gift that kickstarted so much of what you're talking about?
Totally wrong. So with all due respect,
No,
totally wrong.
It was a question. It was phrased as a question.
It was phrased as a question. The answer is no. Look, Barclays Center is $1 billion investment. Any city would want $1 billion investment. But Barclays Center is part of a 26-acre development called Pacific Park that will have thousands and thousands of units of housing, both affordable and market, a new public school, 8 acres of open space, new office building, et cetera. That's one thing. So the Barclays was a catalyst for redevelopment of one piece of Brooklyn. But remember, Brooklyn is huge. So the investment of saying, hey, you have these 6 piers that are right under the Brooklyn Bridge that overlook one of the world's most beautiful skylines, Manhattan. Why are they derelict and why is no one there? Well, now it's a 90-acre park called Brooklyn Bridge Park where millions of people visit and new residential, new hotels, new restaurants, et cetera. So there are pieces of the puzzle that are happening all across the borough. And there's the development. And, you know, people, I know in Brooklyn, I've gotten beaten up at a lot of meetings about development. I am pro-development. Why? Because development brings people. And tall buildings are not just looking at, ooh, look at that beautiful building that's glass. No, I'm looking at the 1,000 people that are living there, that are going out at night in downtown spending money. So we didn't get lucky. We fought for Barclays. We fought for the Nets. We fought for the housing. But you know what? Yeah, now we are getting the roses of it, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, far be it from me to correct the pronunciation of a Brooklynite, but,
yes.
But I believe it's pronounced huge.
Huge.
Not huge.
Huge.
I think it's huge.
Huge.
As in huge, baby, huge.
So it's almost like use as opposed to you.
Exactly.
The plural.
Okay, take your point. Having said all that, Sev, when it comes to... you still with me?
I don't know where we're going. Yeah, yeah.
Wouldn't it be great for, or I should ask, is it great for city building if you got a billionaire who's prepared to put a ton of money into redeveloping one part of town, which presumably acts as a catalyst to so many other things?
Oh, sure, yeah. It's hard to find something wrong with a billionaire whenever he or she would get involved. So absolutely.
Unless he's the president.
Oh, unless what?
Unless he's your president.
Well, that's for another topic, Terry. That's another day. But, you know, one of the things that we haven't yet talked about, but I think is so essential, is the transportation link. I mean, you know, Carlo mentioned that every year they lose $6 billion a year from folks who are from Brooklyn who take their money and spend it somewhere else. We lose $6 billion a year in congestion because our people and goods can't move from spot A to spot Z, as you would say, south of the border. So, you know, you have the advantage of being, 13 kilometers from Manhattan to Brooklyn. That's a healthy jog before OJ in the morning. For someone from Hamilton to get to Toronto, that's a full marathon and a half, which only Terry Cook could do before OJ in the morning. So I think there's an element of transportation accessibility that weaves its way into the success story of Brooklyn and into the city region that we know as of the GTHA. We're seeing the next chapter of investment that hasn't taken place in my entire lifetime finally start to show up. And it's not in the form of a billionaire who floated down from heaven, though it could have probably happened and would have made things a lot easier. But it is in the form of governments that are getting the fact that infrastructure is not a nice to have, it's a must have. And you cannot have quality of life if you do not have the veins of life through multiple mediums and multiple channels. And the LRT that's going to be running through this town is a great example of that, but there needs to be much more, and it needs to include the bike lanes and the other pieces that round out the complete life that is quality of life that is so special here.
What do you imagine the LRT will do to this downtown?
It'll do what transportation, I think, does to every town, Steve. And, you know, we have 2.4 million people cross municipal boundaries in our region a day. Think about that. 2.4 million people cross boundaries. And that's to get to your job, that's to get to your specialist appointment, that's to visit your grandparents. So it is an essential ingredient to having the life that all of us aspire to have. And let me say, for millennials in particular, so we do have in the audience tonight 27 of our civic rock stars, our diversity fellows. And you know, you ask these folks, what kind of life do you want to aspire to have in a city? my staff doesn't even have a driver's license. Like literally, if I had gotten, if I couldn't have a drink tonight because I'm their drive back to the big city. So being able to have transportation not only moves goods, not only moves people, but it's also what the millennials need to have to find a quality of life.
The only thing I would add to that is today as part of the tour, I saw your older rail station that's now an amazing event space and a new rail station. But then I looked around there and there was nothing there. So yes, in New York, I can tell you, and the US is in terrible shape with our infrastructure, we know that. In New York, both the Bloomberg administration and the de Blasio administration today are realizing that we're probably not going to build all these new subway lines in the next 30, 40 years. Then let's invest where we have trains. So in my opinion, that area by that rail station should have 30 or 40 buildings there with thousands and thousands of people living there.
What kind of buildings are we talking?
Whatever you want, whatever works for Hamilton. Whatever is the Hamilton answer or the Hamilton thing, and you guys are going to decide what that thing is because it's about you, make it there. Because if you can get to Toronto in a nice train ride, or you can get anywhere in Canada or wherever, imagine getting off the train, having 10 restaurants, bars, dry cleaners, clothing stores, and thousands of apartments, all within a walk to a train station. That's how you build a city.
Terry, on the LRT, what do you imagine it will do for the city?
It'll densify it, it'll strengthen the tax base, it'll attract young people who we know are not inclined to buy their own cars and want to be fossil fuel dependent. It'll renew the way in which the place thinks about itself. And I hate to remind, for those of us who are old Hamiltonians, that in 1977 or 78, when my grandfather ran the Transit Commission here, this community was chosen as the prototype for the government of Ontario's rapid transit system that ended up, after a 14-12 negative vote by our regional council, ending up as a SkyTrain in Vancouver. Anybody who wants to track the relative development, progress, and vitality of Vancouver over the subsequent 30 years would be, I think, reminded that you get a once-in-a-generation opportunity to take advantage of higher levels of government prepared to invest in infrastructure. That window is now and in Hamilton, and it inevitably has to tie land use planning to that significant investment in transit, both the GO service and the LRT. We can't afford to let another generation pass, because that investment, that opportunity will go elsewhere. Make no doubt about it, we are in a competition here.
I think one of the other things I just want to, nice job, Terry. I just wanted to add the one thing which Carlos was saying was one of the most important things is getting people downtown. Well, that's the one thing it's going to do. It's going to make it so easy for people to get downtown and those downtowners to get back into the burbs, get to the GO station, to get to Toronto if they're working in Toronto. And it's just going to make it generally easy for us to get around. And it's going to help redevelop our downtown and bring it back to, better than the days it's ever been its best.
And I should add one other thing, because I know I talked about it, and we talked a little bit about the young people moving into the downtowns, and it's cool and it's great. But in Brooklyn, there's another demographic moving into the downtowns. It's the parents of the young people who say, enough with the suburbs, enough with the taxes, enough with shoveling snow and all of that. It's basically, I want to live in a nice building where I have a gym, where I can walk outside, and I don't want to cook every night, and I can go out to eat 3 or 4 nights a week, and I can catch a show and, be closer to my kids who now live in the city, see the grandkids more often. And it is an enticing thing for all of you in Hamilton to figure out how to get the baby boomer generation back into the cities from the suburbs. It's a challenge, but if you do it, much more than the young people, and sorry for all the 20-somethings in here, remember the baby boomers have the money, and they're the ones that are more likely to spend the money on the restaurants and all the things you need for the tax base.
Let's also remember, they started downtown and moved out to the burbs, so it should be easy for us to convince them to come down.
Bring them back.
On that front, now I'm going back 40 years here when I say this, and Sev, neither you nor I think, are probably experts on downtown Hamilton today. Having said that, 40 years ago, it was the place to go when you were a high school kid in this town. For me, living up on the West Mountain, you hopped the bus, you went downtown because there was lots of stuff to do. My sense is that's not the way it is anymore. Now, I know you guys went on a tour today, but you actually didn't go on Main Street. You actually didn't go on King Street. You went on James Street, where some of the funkier stuff in town is happening. So, okay, Seb, tell me, what do you do to try to bring back a downtown that's seen better days?
Well, 40 years ago, I was a fetus, Steve.
I was 5.
So I shall infer what was happening in
That
Hamilton
saddens
at
me.
the time, but thank you, Mr. Paikin. Look, a city...
It's a tough crowd tonight, tough crowd.
A city, like any product, is the sum of all the conversations taking place about it. That's your brand. Your brand is the sum of all the conversations taking place about you. And 40 years ago, the sum of all the conversations taking place about Hamilton may have painted a certain picture of what Hamilton was. But the sum of all the conversations taking place about Hamilton today, and especially today, paints a very different picture for what this city is. We don't have to necessarily hold down the rewind button of history to fix pieces or address pieces. We actually just need to listen to what the pieces of the moment are and think about the right planning infrastructure that need to get us there tomorrow. This isn't actually rocket science. This isn't rocket science. You know, I was just in Atlanta a couple weeks ago touring the Beltline, this extraordinary 22-mile loop that's bringing Atlanta back. And when I listened to Carlo this afternoon speak, when I'm in Atlanta, when I'm talking to the folks from Austin, Texas, you know what? Every single city that's seeing revitalization includes the exact same ingredients. Carlo touched on it in his presentation this afternoon, and it talks about the bringing the energy back to the downtown core. That's code. That's code for being authentic to who it is you were from your original spirit, but being smart enough to realize that the future can't reflect what the 40-year vision was. 90% of businesses in Brooklyn are 20 people and less, small businesses. And so that pickle company and the t-shirt lady, and that's sort of the vision for what the downtown in the future has to be, not us getting so hung up on what it once was and trying to go back to those golden days.
Okay, fair enough, but let me follow up on this. For a long time, this city has been trying, and I think seized of the idea of trying to get a National Hockey League team here as an anchor to kickstart all kinds of development in the downtown.
Okay, so we got to take an exit stage left, Snagglepuss,
Yes.
and tease Carlo.
Uh-oh.
Because when you met him, you started talking hockey in the Barclays Center, and you said,
We have the Islanders.
Carlo, your accent reminds me exactly of Gary Bettman. And he said, who the hell is Gary Bettman? I mean, that is exactly the disconnect between the Canadian context and the American. What do you want to know about hockey in downtown?
The question is, do you think in order for the downtown to achieve all of its potential that you need a National Hockey League team here in an arena that will kickstart all kinds of development around it? Is that still the dream?
I don't think so. I think for many years it was. I think the reality, just because of you've written more about this and you're a hockey guy, unfortunately. I suspect territorial rights and a whole lot of other complexities are going to keep this town from an NHL team. But I want to go back to your point about what's working downtown and what isn't, because as much as I love to take experience from great cities like Brooklyn, we've got our own learning lab that is James Street North, where this guy's done a whole lot of good things, and the arts community has really generated momentum. But we forget that there were a couple of fundamental things that happened that preceded much of that momentum. And that was, first of all, that the city took what formerly was the one-way southern express route for trucks coming from Burlington Street to come up 3 lanes of James Street North, which obliterated the streetscape, made it unlivable to be there, and frankly killed small business. And the 2 major things that happened that began the renaissance on James North were A, the investment by the laborers union in an abandoned train station, because they saw a vision with a repurposed, historic, beautiful building, and secondly, a basic municipal planning decision, which was to widen the sidewalks and convert to 2-way streets to at least give the place a chance to regenerate organically. And here we are 15 years later, and we've only taken tiny steps towards recognizing the lessons from this and many other cities about what attracts people to be in these places. A great experience, the opportunity to sit on a patio, enjoy a drink, talk to your spouse, enjoy the back and forth of traffic. You're not going to have that with a 5-lane expressway on Main and King Street. The sooner we invest and learn from those lessons, the better.
No, fair enough. Tim, can I get you on this issue of whether or not, you know, I'm not saying this is all that Brooklyn has done, but clearly the presence of the Nets and the Islanders and the Barclays Center has been a boon for development for you guys. It's been a good thing. Do they need that? Do we need that here in the city of Hamilton, downtown?
Well, I think having great sports teams is obviously critical. I think we already do have some great sports teams in town. I think developing and learning from what we've done in culture is probably more critical to Hamilton's growth and excitement and vibrancy and what's happening in Hamilton, and moving us forward with culture. We have such, I can't stress it, the base of culture in Hamilton is so intense and so ingrained in the entire downtown already. That's what we should be nurturing, that's what we should be spending money on, and that's what tourists are going to come to Hamilton to see.
But can I just add something I said earlier? Yes, clap for that, clap for that. You know, the Nets and the Barclays Center, no doubt about it, was a critical investment. But it worked because it sat on 12 subway lines, and it just got people in and out from the region. But I really want to go back to something I said earlier. That train station, that walking out from the train station and not seeing a live soul is a problem. So spend the money on rezoning, buildings high. Like when you walk, you should look up and not just see stars, but see new residents sitting on their terrace, as you said, having a bottle of wine, and you just know they spent a lot of money to live there, and that money is going into critical infrastructure improvements.
Let me follow up
You
with...
gotta bring people to live downtown.
Let me follow up with one thing we haven't touched on yet, and that is political leadership, something I've been covering for 35 years almost. How crucial was a new way of thinking, a new way of doing business in Brooklyn, politically, to whatever success you have achieved?
I would say there were two things that were critical. One was the political leadership, and kudos to former Mayor Mike Bloomberg, who understood that in 2001, that you had to invest outside of Manhattan, or New York City would never grow. And to my former boss, who was the borough president, who got on the phone with Bruce Ratner for months and said, "Can you bring the Nets to Brooklyn? Can you bring the Nets to Brooklyn?" And he was laughed at. And then after months of fighting, the developer said, "Yes, I can, if I can build 5,000 apartments in doing that." I mean, so yes, political leadership critical, but and I really want to stress this, it's the people. That movement of people that said, you know, I'm in New York for college. I really don't want to live in Manhattan anymore. It's too like Gucci and all these big names. I really want to live in some middle of nowhere called Williamsburg. It was the entrepreneur who said, you know what, I don't want to open up my pizzeria in Greenwich Village. I'm going to do it in Bushwick. Those are the two things, the entrepreneur, the people, and the political leadership together created where we are today.
May I pick up on this point on political leadership? Because, Steve, you're absolutely right. For decades, the sector that city built was largely the monopoly of government, right? And we would show up with our golf pencils and stand behind our cardboard cutouts, and we would vote for our leaders, and in effect, they would take on the business of city building. That's not how city building is done anymore. And, you know, in this room alone, on this stage alone, you can see people who do not necessarily have political roles, who play political, who contribute to the political process, because they're city builders from different vantage points. You know, we've got Rob McIsaac here, who heads the Hamilton Health Sciences. What HHS is doing, not only for the health services and, here in this city, in this region, but also for the country as a whole, is second to none. You've got Keenan Loomis, and while it's called the Chamber of Commerce, every time I talk to Keenan, we're not talking about commerce, we're talking about city building and what's happening outside the folds of what a traditional Chamber of Commerce may do. I think everyone has taken off their sectoral hats, and everyone's gotten involved in city building. It's sexy. It's a great thing to be part of. And there's another generation, by the way, that's coming up the ranks that is eager to take the baton and run with it. And they actually weren't raised with an expectation that a certain person with a certain title is the only group that gets to create these sort of city building conversations. They're expecting that city building is done as a collaborative thing. And so I can't wait to see the kind of results that come out of the energies with that base baked in from day one.
Terry, I don't have to establish your bona fides on politics. You know how it goes, and you know that you often hear...
I'm still in the witness protection program. By the way, I only got them to amalgamate here in 2001. They haven't forgiven me. Yours was in 1898, and they're just now getting over it. So
I'm still not over
it. The arc of history is long.
What about the noise? I mean, I live in a city right now where the former mayor was hostile to LRTs, didn't want them built, hostile to bike routes. How you're laughing because there's a few other things about the ex-mayor that I haven't said. Okay, we don't need to get into that. How often do you run into, well, we can't do that, we've never done it that way?
Well, the great thing in Hamilton is that the conversation that Sivan has just talked about is happening here at a level of sophistication and depth that we've never experienced before. And I would say, with apologies to those of us who have lived here a lifetime, and you know, I live a block from the house I lived in as a kid, but thankfully, most of my neighbors have changed. And many of them are people who have come here to carve out a better future for their kids, just as the previous generation did to the train station.
That's a critical thing in Brooklyn.
And they don't suffer from that same insularity in that sense that we can't do things differently or we can't change travel patterns because we've always gone quickly from Westdale to Eastgate Square with synchronized lights and 5 lanes of traffic. They think differently about neighborhoods. And I think what is slowly changing here is a political understanding that, in fact, it is a collaborative dialogue, that it isn't a top-down. The days of Robert Moses, you know, drawing a line across Manhattan and bulldozing miles and miles of property aren't going to happen anymore. We're in an age of enlightened self-interest in which a broader part of the community is going to participate in this conversation. And in Hamilton's case, we're fortunate that many of those people who have come here have lived other places and aren't burdened by the same preconceived notions that my generation was.
When you deal with City Hall, Tim, what kind of political leadership do you see?
Well, I don't want to be a downer. But I'm going to be a downer. Okay. City Hall, love you. I'm sure there's some of you in here. Staff, I'm sure there's a lot of you in here, but you've got to get, can I swear?
You
the
can
fuck out of the way. Because being a guy in town...
You sounded like a Brooklynite there for a minute.
You guys will get along well.
We will.
Being a guy in town who doesn't just do, but I put my money where my mouth is as well, as little as I have, it's a huge challenge to do these developments in this city. And it's something that needs to be talked about. But we're already talking about it to death. So stop talking about it and let's just get it out of the way and let people do what they want to do. So the small guy can develop a property, the mid-sized guy can develop a property, and when we finally convince the Torontonians to come and actually put their money where their mouth is into this town and spend some money to build some nice big buildings in our core, they'll come, and they can do it easily. Because right now, it is not easy. I can tell you from personal experience, it is very challenging to redevelop properties in this city.
That was a technical term you used there, wasn't it? Yeah?
Yeah. That's right. I use it every fucking day.
Now you're sounding like a South Brooklynite.
Terry, I do want you to follow up, but first of all, can you just give us an example of how they don't get the F out of the way? What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, it can just be challenging from taking, one of the things that I sort of specialize in is taking old buildings. There's lots of them in downtown that need to be brought back to life, and it's very, very challenging to do those projects.
Because why?
Because you're trying to fit new zoning bylaws into, a round peg into a square hole or a square peg into a round hole. And, we need to, the building department, all the departments need to rally around trying to make these things happen because there's so many properties downtown that we don't want to see go away. But the easiest thing to do is take a bulldozer to them and knock them down. So we've got lots of infill. There's lots of opportunity to build on the parking lots that we were talking about earlier. There's lots of opportunities to build on the sites that don't have buildings on them. But we also have to remember that we have to keep all those existing buildings that we do have that are run down and bring them back to life. And all those things, they all add up to a diverse, fun, cool, exciting town.
Terry, you wanted to add?
Actually, Steve, I think Tim's made the point well and more forcefully than I could. I run a foundation. I have to be more polite. The one point we haven't touched on that I see as a looming threat to the renewal in this community, and I simply need to put it on the table, is the experience with folks who choose to come here to invest, to start a new life, to make a difference, is inevitably limited and calibrated by the quality of your public school system. And this is a struggle that your country and your city continues to go through. Your schools are more segregated today than they were when Brown versus Board of Education was passed by the Supreme Court. And our inner city schools continue to be highly impoverished, poorly performing, and frankly underfunded. And to the extent families choose to come here and want to be part of a neighborhood and give back, they don't all have the luxury of being able to send their kids to private school. If they're going to invest in and participate in the community, we need a school system and a sense of productive commitment to education that is a whole lot better than what we have today in this community. The findings in the Code Red report and the Spectator about graduation rates in the inner city are abysmal, frankly, and should be an affront to all of us. And we need to have that part of the economic development conversation. When I was in regional government, one thing we never talked about when it came to how do you attract jobs and talent was, what's the quality of public education? If it fails, frankly, at the end of the day, we are limited in terms of the renewal that we can achieve here.
What's the that's well said. Thank you. What's the quality of education, public education in Brooklyn like these days?
I mean, look, it's like anywhere else in the world. You have neighborhoods that have incredible public schools, and you have neighborhoods that have some challenges. And I think the challenge that we all face, particularly in the business community, is how do we invest in the public schools? And it's not just putting money. It's not just saying, well, here's more money, here's more money. It's what are we doing to invest in the critical thinking that's coming out? Why are we still teaching in the U.S. In a school system that was built 100 years ago? You know, when people took months off a year to go work on their farms. They shouldn't. Kids should be going to school, not taking 2 months off. We should have a longer school day. I mean, these are all things that are critical. I personally am a supporter of charter schools. I'm a supporter of public schools. I'm a supporter of Catholic schools. I'm a supporter of private schools, yeshivas, whatever gets the job done, whatever works, however you can think outside the box, that's what you have to do. But we definitely have challenges.
Okay. Let me go out on a bit of a tangent here. Don't take this question the wrong way, SP.
Yeah.
But I always thought civic action was a Greater Toronto Area thing.
You were wrong.
We're in
Mr.
Hamilton
Pinkin.
tonight,
No.
so what are you doing here anyway?
Well, you're just so warm and hospitable. I couldn't say no. No, we're a regional organization. So, but you're absolutely right. In our original days, so Civic Action, for those who aren't as familiar, Civic Action is a nonprofit organization that sits at the nexus of where all the sectors converge, and we try to tackle those big urban challenges that need an all-hands-on-deck approach, where leaders, both established and rising, can get involved and get on with it. And we say we're civic action, we're not civic chit-chat, so we're not interested in having the conversations, we're more interested in having the conversations that lead to results. And so when we were first incepted about 13 years ago, it was just for the Toronto area, Toronto specific. But over those years, and in the last 6 and 7 in particular, the import of the region has moved front and center to our agenda. That was done for a couple of reasons. One, that's how people live. And when you think about the factors that go into quality of life and that go into a prosperous economic area, the region matters. It also was done because of the driving force of many of our board members, including someone like Rob McIsaac, who saw ahead of the curve how the rise of the city region would dictate the rise and fall of certain municipalities. And so we live like a region, we think like a region, we work like a region, and so the H is proudly in the GTHA for civic action.
Do we really think like a region? Do we really? Because I don't know, I'm asking here. It's possible to infer that the priorities of people who live in Hamilton are not the same as the priorities of people who live in Oshawa, for example, which is, as much as 2 hours away from here. Do we really think regionally these days?
Well, you know what? The priorities, I would suggest, Steve, that the priorities, when you boil them right down, really aren't that different. Everybody wants to have a job to get to, a means of transportation to get there, a roof over your head, a decent education for your kids, affordable daycare, so you have a place to put them, senior care when your parents need the assisted supported living that they have the dignity and right to have. I mean, when you boil it all down, it doesn't matter if you're in Brooklyn, if you're in 416-905-647, everybody wants the same thing. But when you realize, as we increasingly compete, not with Burlington down the road, not with Toronto down the road, but with international jurisdictions around the world, then we force ourselves to take our blinders and make them a little bit further out, because when companies choose, and that will dictate how we rise and fall, our foreign direct investments will have a huge, increasingly even more so, huge role in understanding how successful we intend to be. And I'll tell you, companies that are picking Shanghai, the Toronto region, they're looking at the big picture, which forces us to think about the big picture as it relates to housing affordability, transportation investment, public education investments, because the world won't choose us based on a little microscope. We shouldn't be focused on our own priorities in the same kind of microscope.
Thank you for re-educating me on that. Incidentally, that was good. I want to put a new issue on the table here, and Carl, I'm going to start with you on this, because one of the buzzwords, I guess, we hear a lot about these days, necessary to bring cities back, is either intensification or densification, that kind of thing. I want to know what kinds of fights you guys had in Brooklyn as you tried to convince neighborhoods that were accustomed to having bungalows or two-story homes, and that's it, to accepting 4, 5, 6, maybe 8-story buildings, condos.
Try 40, 50, and 60-story buildings.
Okay, even more, because it made more sense in terms of urban planning to put bigger, denser projects near them, even though they've never wanted that. How'd you deal with that?
So I personally got beaten up a lot over it. The elected officials who supported it got beaten up a lot in it. But we did it in a smart way. So we said, look, downtown Brooklyn is the core of our city center. There should be 80, 90-story buildings. We all agreed on that. But, so while we were upzoning, and I talked a little bit about the Williamsburg-Greenpoint waterfront, we also protected. So we didn't go into a neighborhood. You may not know Park Slope, for example. You know Park Slope. Brownstones, tree-lined blocks. We never said we're going to put up an 80-story building on a tree-lined block. But what we did say was, look, there is a street called 4th Avenue, which is a 6-lane highway and blah, blah, blah. Maybe on that street with subway access, with a train stop every 10, 20 blocks, it makes sense to go up. But we will, at the same time, the side streets go down. So we protected the character of neighborhoods while upzoning in transit-rich communities. And that's really the balance. So I'm not saying to you, go into one of your cute little neighborhoods and tear everything down and build up. But what I am saying is there are places where appropriate development is critical. We then had a rule that if you were putting a building up, you had to put ground floor retail. You had to make the streetscape alive, because you don't just want buildings without retail. We wanted provisions for supermarkets, because I don't know about here, but there are parts of Brooklyn that are supermarket starved because, and no offense to my banker friends in the room, the banks pay a lot of money for retail, the supermarkets don't. So we created incentives for supermarkets, incentives for daycare center, incentives for medical use, community facility, affordable housing. So now if you come to the city and say, gee, I want to go higher than I can, you can if you create affordable housing, community facility, medical, school, daycare, and you must have retail. And that was the balance of it all. And by the way, not everyone is happy, and too bad.
Understood, yes. Tell me, the politicians who got beaten up over this, did some of them lose?
The politicians who got beaten up were wonderfully reelected. They were strong enough to make the tough decisions. Deals were made, of course, and compromises were made. And, you know, a politician who said, look, if you're going to rezone my neighborhood along the water, I want open waterfront access for all people. That's a good thing to ask for. Or a politician who said, look, if you're putting up all of these buildings, you got to include public schools. These are good things to ask for. So we asked for things that the development community had to give back to the community they were building in, but we allowed them to build more in return for more.
So we have hundreds of local, literally hundreds of local politicians, you know, on the municipal councils all the way along the south shore of Lake Ontario, around the top shore to Clarington or wherever it ends. Is that where it ends? In the East End? I don't know, Oshawa, wherever, in York Region. Are you saying courageous decisions will be endorsed and therefore they should make them?
They have to make them, because if they don't make them, then you made a good point. You're not competing with Toronto. We weren't competing with Manhattan. We're competing with the world. So believe me, if we're not making the tough decisions, trust me, there are other cities in the world that want development, that want the jobs, that want the people, and they'll make the decisions, and then we go backwards. So critical decisions, leadership decisions. By the way, if you can get something out of it for your community and your constituents, God bless you, and you should. But if you're going to be in the middle and in the way of progress, step aside, because it's going to bulldoze you and it may hurt you in the end.
Tim, what do you see in terms of this intensification debate in Hamilton? Are there people who are trying to get higher buildings built? Are there neighbors who are fighting back because they don't want it? Which way do the local politicians go on it? What are you seeing?
Well, it's all over the map. I mean, I think it's very important. I think the tall building intensification is extremely important. And again, in the right neighborhoods, in the right communities, you know, not in you know, streetscapes that don't deserve those types of tall buildings. But it's absolutely essential to the rebuilding of downtown Hamilton. We have to have tall buildings, and we have the places to put them. We just have to, you know, encourage the development community to come here to build them. And you know, that's sort of the bottom line. It's from political perspective, we're definitely seeing you know, the downtown ward councillors encouraging these types of buildings as well, which is really positive.
Terry, I'm going to ask you the same kind of question, which is, what is a local politician supposed to do when she knows that it's a good idea to have intensified development at a particular, say, transportation node in the city, but a lot of the residents are living near that who are going to be responsible ultimately for re-electing or not that politician are opposed?
So thankfully, having been elected barely out of my teenage years, my first major issue was an intensification issue, high-rise building on an old brownfield site for which I got hung in effigy. City council meeting was adjourned while we called law enforcement to settle the crowd down. It went to the OMB, they built the buildings, and guess what? I not only won 6 subsequent elections, I won the poll in which that building was built. Incumbents don't get beat about intensification. Absolutely. If over the long term the trajectory of the neighborhood and the community is improving. 2 points though. One is, to the extent we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity around transit, both GO and LRT, if we fail to bootstrap the need for intensification along the primary corridors, then we'll have lost and seen leakage of the tax base that we need to sustain and support that, and the population base that will use it. And secondly, the piece we haven't talked about with my buddy McIsaac sitting in the front row is, when he did the Greenbelt around the GTA in Hamilton, it was precisely because we understood that there was a limited amount of that we could continue to absorb while maintaining and building vital inner cities. And to the extent we defend tough urban boundaries and the need for intensified land use everywhere, city and suburbs, we're either going to succeed or fail. And I think that's different in a New York context. You didn't have to worry about folks building low-density sprawl 10 minutes away. That's a different thing that we have control of, that we have to address if we're going to succeed with a different kind of a future in Hamilton.
SP, where do you think the debate on intensification is at today?
Well, I think it depends on what year you were born in.
Here we go again.
So, but No, and I don't want to hear any F-bombs out of you down there, Tim, but the reality, I mean, so Toronto is a great example in terms of, I just took our 7-year-old up to the CN Tower for her first time. She got to see the city, and actually today on our tour, Keenan brought us up to the Stelco Tower. We got to see this extraordinary 360 view of the city of Hamilton. I mean, it was breathtaking. The first skyscraper arrived in Toronto in 1967. And, when I took Zeta up and we stood and we had dinner, or lunch rather, $47 for a kid's meal at the revolving restaurant, the CN Tower. But anyway, very expensive chicken fingers and fries. But we saw all of the city. And the thought that it was only 1967 that the first skyscraper was up, it blows my mind. So there is a different generation that's born with different expectations on what how high the layers of history go. And I think so long as we honor our roots, Brooklyn has done a brilliant job of doing that. The development that we saw on our walking tour this afternoon has done such a brilliant job of that. You haven't tried to bulldoze your layers. Right. You've just built atop them where and how it makes sense. And I think that is the future. Every year in the region, the GTHA, 150,000 people more arrive. Right? But there's already 42% of Torontonians that live in apartment buildings, 26% for here in Hamilton. So it's not as if we can just continue to just get smaller in the existing spaces. We have to go up. But we have to do so with the dignity that history deserves so that we don't lose the character that we fought so hard to preserve.
And when a politician says, I can't win re-election if I allow this kind of density in my neighborhood.
Well, we called Terry Cook and he runs their campaign.
Well, given that 95% of municipal incumbents get reelected anyway, you have to work real hard to get defeated over intensification. Can I just make one other quick historic parallel? Because the closer lesson, harkening back to '67, was the relative position of Toronto to Buffalo. In 1967, Buffalo was a vibrant center of culture, sports, arts, population base of 1 million people, the best architectural base in the U.S., maybe outside of Chicago or Brooklyn. Yep. And in the subsequent 40 years, very different choices were made on the two sides of the border. Why was it that we continued to grow and prosper on this side and they didn't? And I would suggest to you that that's a complicated debate that would require alcohol, but we should reflect upon it given where we are tonight.
Okay, well, before we induce any more comments with alcohol, part of my job tonight is to make sure we stay on time. And to that end, I think we should give our friend from the States the last word on this tonight. Any parting words for us tonight, Carlo?
You know, it's first of all, and I really mean this. It's great to be here. It's not something I thought I would do again. You've taught me a lot about Canada. You know, the joke in the U.S. I shouldn't say this. Don't tweet it. But the joke in the U.S. I'm sure you heard it. Is that Canada is a lot like the U.S. but with better health care and stricter gun laws. So congratulations on both of those things. No more comment on that. But your point is really important, the Buffalo-Toronto point, because you are at that point right now. You can explode, you can embrace change, you can embrace buildings, you can embrace new things, you can embrace people like you who are doing interesting, dynamic things, and become the hub of the future, or you can fight and say no and say, oh, but I like this little bungalow, or I don't really want anything here, or the downtown, shouldn't be open till 1 in the morning, or whatever your limits are. And if you do that, then unfortunately you will almost be a Buffalo type. And then it will take you a long time, because Buffalo is now coming back, but it's taken a governor who's got a huge set of you-know-what to come in there and say, we are going to make Buffalo great again. Why do you want to get to that point? You're already on a great road. You have incredible natural resources. Use what God gave you. Use the positioning. Use what you have. Just make it better, and then you will continue to flourish. And you are a great place, I mean it. And sell yourself and be proud of it.
As we ask Keenan to come up on stage and wrap things up tonight, I know you all want to join me in thanking these great panelists for coming from near and far for a great discussion tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for keeping us on time. I really appreciate it. It's great to have you here. You are the best at what you do, so thank you so much for that. I want to thank Carlo so much for coming here, answering that call on Monday morning, and for following through and coming here and being a part of this, and to all of our panelists. We do have gifts for all of our panelists. So from the Hamilton store, we stopped off earlier today and got those. And this is a sample. It's all a goodie bag full of Hamilton, made in Hamilton stuff. But I do actually have something for Carlo, so I want you to come up here. You can wear it right now. That would be great. Yeah, and they won their playoff game yesterday, so it's perfect. If they didn't, I don't know if I would present that to you, but so thank you again to all of our panelists and to Carlo. I want to thank RBC Royal Bank, Grant Thornton, and Hamilton Community Foundation for our gold level sponsorships. Silver level sponsors, WestJet, Cogeco, and Cable 14. And thank you to Leuna 837 for sponsoring the reception. Nice. It's a great brand, isn't it? Just, yeah, it's awesome. I want to thank Oscar Kichi and the Lincoln Alexander Center, the residents of the Hamilton Philharmonic Youth Orchestra, and a leading downtown venue for arts, culture, and education. This was a great venue for this. I want to thank all the people who volunteered their time today touring the Diversity Fellows around Hamilton. And thank you so much to the Diversity Fellows and Civic Action team for being in Hamilton all day. Really appreciate that. Again, if any of you want to stay, we'd be more than happy to put you up. And I want to thank, more than anything else, my team, in particular Scott McCammon, Richard Allen, Julia Jarasauskas, and Whitney Eames. I have a great team that allows us to do these excellent events. And finally, I just want to thank all of you for making this a great sold-out show. We're already working on next year's Ambitious Cities, so I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Good job.